The new Fiona and Cake series for Adventure Time just released 2 new episodes over on the streaming service Max, and we finally got answers to who actually created Fiona and Cake within the world, though we're still left with some questions about how things ended up the way they did, so let's break it all down. But warning, there's spoilers ahead. Now, the first 4 episodes of the series run together like one long sort of mini-movie that sets up the actual episode-by-episode plot we'll be exploring from here on out. Episode 1 introduced us to the world of Fiona and her cat Cake, who live in a place and time similar to our own here in the real world. This was surprising because we know Fiona and Cake as gender-bent versions of Jake and Finn from fan fictions written by the Ice King. These stories would gender bend pretty much all of the Adventure Time characters and recontextualize their personality through some sort of gendered subculture stereotype that each could now have as the opposite gender. We've known for a while now, however, that the ideas about Fiona and Cake aren't actually from the Ice King. He jokes that the ideas for his stories of Fiona and Cake are beamed into his head at night just like with everybody else, which the audience was meant to assume were his dreams. We see at the end of the episode, however, that the Ice King actually does get these stories beamed into his brain. This meant, aside from the additions that Ice King would make, such as the inclusion of him as a romantic figure, the stories of Fiona and Cake were being made by someone else, or else were actually physically happening elsewhere and somehow getting transmitted to the Ice King. This was never addressed in the show itself, but instead, the door was left open for this amazing miniseries. Fiona would spend episode 1 in her very boring world trying to take care of her cat Cake, and longing for a fantasy world similar to her dreams where she and Cake are superheroes, similar to their stories that were being beamed into the Ice King's head. Cake seems to have had the same dreams, which included a handsome Ice King figure, and somehow managed to slip through a portal in ice. Episode 2 gave us a parallel story happening in the world of Ooh, a few decades after the events of the Adventure Time series. At this point, Finn is an adult, and the Ice King is still living as Simon after having that identity taken from him by Gulb in the Adventure Time finale. He spends the episode pining over his lost love, Betty, who turned herself to Gulb to stop him from destroying reality and to return to the nothingness that Gulb represents. By the end of the episode, he decides to try and bring himself to her, or her to him, using some sort of magic, but in doing so, creates a portal instead to Fiona and Cake, allowing Cake to slip through. Episode 3 followed Cake through the world of Ooh as she got used to her surroundings and learned to talk using a machine. Fiona would of course follow her, and the two would end up on an adventure that makes them love this new world and never want to return home. However, they would be abducted by Prismo, someone we knew from the end of episode 1 would end up getting involved in the strange multiverse time travel issue. Prismo finally reveals that he is the one who actually created Fiona and Cake after being bored from his endless existence as the Wishmaster in his infinite time cube. He recognized immediately that it was a bit of a ripoff of the stories of Finn and Jake, but Prismo didn't mind. His existence has been granting wishes, essentially copying realities and only making them different based on the wishes people made. His concept of creation is to take something that already exists and to simply invert it or change a key detail to see the results and find new meaning in its stories. Because this was unauthorized, however, he asked the Ice King to hide this miniverse in his mind, which we know to be a bit of an elaborate maze because of his insanity. This would make it a great place to hide an elaborate other universe. Being in the mind of the Ice King, however, this miniverse was likely influenced by his thoughts, and the magic of this universe was being powered by the Ice King's crown. However, Prismo explains that he lost contact with this dimension when the Ice King and Betty were inside of the Chaos Being Gulb in the original series finale. Here, he digested their magic, breaking Ice King back down to Simon and Betty as well to her baser form. This cuts off the magic from Fiona's dimension, but it didn't stop the dimension itself from existing. Instead, everything and everyone in it shifted into a new form of existence that was without magic, similar to the world Simon lived in before his actions with the crown played its role in making the world a more magical place. Simon wanted to be with Betty, who is now Gulb, and use some Gulb artifact and this living magic battery bird to try and reconnect with her. But with his thoughts distracted by talk of Fiona and Cake, he instead used the magic to create a portal directly to them. The portal manifesting in his head, because that is where Prismo actually stored it. Free in the real OO, the girls would have felt at home with the magical way that things worked, and they made it clear that they don't want to return to Third even when a cosmic being like Prismo is trying to insist on it. Instead, they try to run away, but they made everything go wrong when Prismo got a visit from the Scarab. The Scarab is a god auditor, an entity who audits beings like Prismo and is looking for any excuse to get him fired. Something Prismo seems like he might want after being around so long and having such tired eyes in this new series. But this is seen as a great danger to Prismo, as it means Fiona and Cake, as well as everyone in their dimension, will die. Simon is frustrated at being pulled into all of this, but the fact that those people could die is the final push he needs to take the remote of Prismo and escape with Fiona and Cake. This sets up the series so that each episode can be an entirely different dimension, with Prismo insisting that they have to keep moving indefinitely, as the Scarab can come after them endlessly. Simon, however, sets up an end goal for the series, insisting that he will fix this by bringing magic back to Fiona's world. It was the magic of the Ice King that maintained the magic of Fiona's world, and without that magic, it became a normal world like our own, so becoming the Ice King again would restore the magic there as well. Now, from the trailer, we can see that it does indeed look like we'll be adventuring in other dimensions, but there's also shots of what appears to be Simon in the more human world interacting with Betty, and lots of shots of the human gender bends of Ooh in Simon's mind, so there will be a lot to explore there too. When learning the story of Simon as the Ice King, Fiona notes that the Ice King looked legitimately happy. Simon insists that he was insane, looking miserable at this time, but Fiona is onto something. Yes, being the Ice King is a sort of horrible punishment type of fate, but Simon himself says he misses being the Ice King. This isn't because of the insanity itself, but the power it gave him that allowed him to interact with the world of Ooh in perhaps a more meaningful way. While he started as the chief villain of the Adventure Time series, he managed to become an important part of many people's lives even as the Ice King, and as Simon, he's essentially become the main character of this new series. The episode of course ended with him deciding to become the Ice King again, in this case it being something of a punishment and an escape for Simon. I say punishment because he will of course be going back to that insane state he hates, but a release because it's also a prison that he knows well. In the end, Simon still exists within the maze of the Ice King even after he goes insane, and the Ice King is able to protect the ones he loves, and could probably even be something of a heroic figure in the new world of Ooh if he has the right people there to guide him into using his powers correctly. This could even be Fiona and Cake, who may choose to keep living in the real Ooh instead of their gender-bent home even if they return it to its magical state, finding a true purpose in adventuring with the Ice King. The season is largely about the fantasies of Simon becoming a reality, and one thing he wrote about a lot was a personal connection with Fiona and Cake. That was his addition to the stories that were already being written by Prismo. And while this may not be what the Ice King had originally intended, it would be a very sweet ending for Fiona and Cake, two beings who were in many ways the children of Simon, to decide to take care of him as the Ice King as part of protecting him while he protects their dimension inside of his head. But what do you guys think? Let me know your opinions in the comments down below, and if you want to talk about Adventure Time some more, come on down to the Cartoon Universe Discord server. There, we have different channels where you can talk about different cartoons. Use the link in the pinned comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time.